Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Local Review Body of the 18th of September 2025. I can confirm that the meeting has been properly called and is quoted. Can I first ask members to appoint a chair for the meeting today, please? Councillor Dempster?
Thanks, Tracy. I see we have two members in the hall, and I wonder if either they might be willing to chair the meeting, given that they're already present in the building. It might be more appropriate if they chair the meeting.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, members. Councillor Dryburgh's just making his way to the top. Just give us a minute, thank you.
Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this local review body of Thursday, the 18th of September 2025 at 1:30. And this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the council website for public listening. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Write and speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. Similar to the process now followed at full council, when considering motions amendments which are substantive in nature, I will call a recess where necessary so that I may seek governance advice on competency. This is good practice in governance terms, and will also provide for governance to be able to collate and circulate the terms of said motion amendments to members in order that they have the opportunity to properly review it. I hope this process makes matters more effective, and I seek member support in implementing this. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally as using their title, e.g. Councillor Jones, so that it is clear who are councillors and who, by the process of elimination, are officers. I'll then go on to item 2, which is sediment apologies and chair's approval of members' remote participation. Tracy, can you?
Thanks, Chair. We've got 5 members present in total, 2 members present here in the chambers at Council HQ Dumfries, being the Chair and Councillor John Campbell. 3 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Beretti, Councillor Dempster, Councillor Lowe. 1 member not present at the start is Councillor Hislop, and we have 1 apology from Councillor Slater. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, and I confirm my agreement to the participation of those members recorded as participating remotely. Item 3 then is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declaration of interest they wish to make? Take that as a no. Tracy, can you now take the local review body through the documents and papers for the meeting? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So I can confirm that we've got 4 notices of review for consideration at the meeting today. Just so members know, Councillor Hislop's just joined us in the hall. So item 4. Foster Meadow, Crotherstown, Dumfries, refusal of planning permission for formation of hard standing area, siting of residential static caravan and installation of septic tank and soakaway, retrospective. So within your papers, members, you've got the notice of review dated the 20th of March 2025, submitted by Butler Land Management Limited, which are the agents, on behalf of Mr R. Wright, the applicant, and received as part of the valid submission on the 1st of May 2025, and that can be found on pages 17 to 21. You've then got the report on handling, determined under delegated powers and related correspondence, pages 25 to 39. Got the observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 43 to 45. The planning application form submitted on the 8th of November 2023, associated plans and supporting information registered as valid on the 6th of December 2023 as pages 49 to 83. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 17th of February 2025 can be found pages 87 to 90. Relevant extracts from the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4 are on pages 93 to 115. And then you've got the photos of the application site and locality on pages 119 to 120. So the grounds for refusal, which are on page 88 in your papers, are: it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that further permanent residential accommodation is essential in operational terms for the needs of the agricultural or the equestrian business in this location, or there is a genuine justified short-term need for temporary residential accommodation in this location. Accordingly, the proposal is contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2, Policies H3 and H7, and National Planning Framework 4, Policy 17. The applicant has asked that the review be dealt with on the basis of 1. Further written submissions, 2. On the basis of 1 or more hearing sessions, and 3. By means of an inspection of the land which is subject of the review, and that's on page 18 of your papers. So the grounds stated in the notice of review statement, starting on page 21, are in summary. The farm extends to just under 200 acres, are present and carries the following enterprises: contract, heifer rearing, wintering sheep, producing haylage and hay for sale, and to be also fed on farm to the livestock, and livery horses. Horse livery, schooling and breaking horses around 5 at a time, and clinics for horses with issues bringing in specialist instructors, 2 to 3 per month. The present farm staff are Mr. R. Wright, Mrs. A. Wright and Miss M. Wright, who wish to occupy the caravan. Both Mr. and Mrs. Wright are well past retirement age, and whilst Mr. Wright does limited farm work, Mrs. Wright is no longer able to participate in either the farm or the equestrian business. Miss Wright occupies the equestrian business, and this involves dealing with all matters. Horse owners arrive at all times of the day and require attention and or possibly long forage sales and or use of meanage, etc. Security is a major concern, and this is required 24/7. Miss Wright requires a caravan partly as a biosecurity gatehouse and partly to prevent her parents being disturbed at all hours of the day and night. There has been an incident on the farm which was reported to the police of people coming onto the farm and disturbing the horses. The health and welfare of the animals in their care is vital, hence the need for the caravan. Bearing in mind the Council's succession policy, this business is not in a position to apply for a house, but a caravan would afford the opportunity for the next generation to take over the farm. The applicants are disappointed that no discussion regarding the need for this facility was carried out during the process of the application. The applicants would be happy to screen the site with trees. There appear to be many caravans to accommodate workers on many farms in the area. You've then got your development plan policies listed on page 93 to 115. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are: would the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2, policies H3 and H7, and the guidance set out in the adopted LDP2 supplementary guidance in relation to the principle of the proposed development at this application site? Would the proposal fail to comply with MPF4, policy 17? Specifically, is it agreed that it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that further permanent residential accommodation is essential at this location in operational terms for the needs of agriculture or the required equestrian business? Is it agreed that it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that there is a genuine justified short-term need for temporary residential accommodation at this location in operational terms for the needs of agriculture or the related equestrian business? If it is considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for the proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? So, having outlined the documents within your papers, it falls to the local review body to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review today. It's confirmed that no representations will be heard from any party, and the options available to the review body today are: you can decide that you have sufficient information before you to enable you to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. The local review body will require to state precisely the information it's seeking and who must provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters. Or resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied. This can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would obviously not allow a decision to be made today. If the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then the local review body has full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. A planning advisor is present at your meeting in relation to this case and the following 3 cases. It's confirmed that he has not had any involvement in this case prior to the submission of the notice of review, and he was not the case officer or the appointed officer. He is here to provide independent advice on matters of planning policy, law or process. A solicitor is also present today, and she will act independently if the local review body requires specific advice on matters of law. So if members are clear and no further clarifications required, I will now ask the Chair to lead the debate and in the first instance to lead the local review body through the papers and decide if you have sufficient information to determine it today. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Tracy. So what I normally do at this time is ask the officer to go through the photographs. So, Robert, if you'd be kind enough to do that.
Thanks, Chair. There's 3 photographs in the presentation today. Just to confirm, these have been provided to me by the case officer, together with the captions. I haven't been in the site case, apart from at this meeting today. So these replicate the pictures that you see in your papers on pages 119 to 120, and there's 3 of them. So the first one is a view of the caravan, front and side elevations, and the area of hard standing. So as a kind of cross-reference, there is a plan within this submission which shows where you've got on page 71, a site plan showing where the caravan is in relation to the hard standing and the septic tank, so that might be helpful. Second picture is, this is the side elevation of the caravan, and you've also got the area of hard standing there on the right hand side. And the final picture, again, you've got the caravan on the left hand side and the area of hard standing there as well.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Any questions on the photographs? No. We'll then go to the index of context for any points of clarity. So we've got the notice of review dated 20th of March from pages 17 to 21. Is there any points of clarity required? No. Okay, we'll then go to the report on handling, pages 25 to 39. Any points of clarity required on that? Councillor Bretty.
Thank you, Chair. On page 37, it does mention Mrs. Wright's illness, or it doesn't say what it is, but the condition. Looking at the date that this was done. Is there indication as to whether or not this has deteriorated? Because it does say, well, at the speed at which deterioration will take place. And from the previous one, although I didn't see it, it says Mrs. Wright lives in the house. So and I just wondered what that clarification would be.
Robert.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at that part of the submission, I see that that is dated the 4th of January 2024. I can confirm that sensitive information has been received since then, and that forms part of the submission. Now, that's a doctor's letter of the 6th of March 2025, so that would provide a more up-to-date position in relation to that issue.
You happy with that, John?
I'm assuming we'll see that, because I haven't seen that letter. At least I don't know of its existence. Thank you, Chair.
It was sent as another thing, I think it was the day after the papers came, on the 9th of September. And it's a doctor's letter saying that she is currently taking cocodamol. No. Okay.
Yeah, it's been wedged in between the exempt document pack.
All right,
That's
you got
what
it, have you? Right,
I've
okay,
got it now,
fine.
Chair. Thank you.
Right, okay. Any others? What was that? Yeah. So any other points of clarification needed between pages 25 and 39? We've got the observation. Sorry, John.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Just a quick one, page 27. It mentions in paragraph 4.5 that accommodation may be permitted on the site to meet a justified short-term need for the temporary caravan. Saying as this caravan's already been on there for 2 years, would that just mean that, you know, if we were minded to go down that road, that they would only have 1 year left, or would it be 3 years from any decision that's made today? Just for a bit of clarification. Thanks, Chair.
It would be in your gift to decide how long to give if you are minded to grant it a temporary permission. I think the point that the case officer is making in the delegated report is the policy says that would be short-term, justified short-term need for up to 3 years, and if it's been there for 2 years, then they've kind of used up most of it. So the logic in that would be that that would only really be effective for an additional 1 year. But the obvious concern in this case is that there isn't a demonstrable short-term need for the temporary accommodation in itself.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's what I thought.
Thank you. We'll then go on the observation of the appointed officer on the applicant agent's notice of review, pages 43 to 45. Any clarification needed? Okay, so we'll then go on the planning application form submitted on the 8th of November 2023, associated plans, including amended plans and supporting information, registered and valid on the 6th of December 2023. That's pages 49 to 83. Any points of clarification? Okay, the decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 17th of February 2025, that's pages 87 to 90. Any points of clarification? And then we've got the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Frameworks, pages 93 to 115. Any points of clarification required? And we've already seen the photographs for that. So, members, we have a decision to make on this. Are there any input from members as we are in session on this one? Councillor Hislop.
Chair, could we have clarification, because it says in here that if we were to allow it for 10 years as a temporary, it then becomes permanent because it's there for so long. What is the maximum amount of years it could be temporary? Is it the 2 to 3, or could we say 5, which would give them a couple of years to decide? 2 years have had, or 2 or 3 years have had, plus another couple of years to actually bring forward a case, because within one of the letters from Mr. Butler, it was saying they were assessing the needs of Mrs. Wright, which 5 years might give them, you know, a couple of years to actually see what requirements were needed for any building, or whether they would need to move out the farmhouse, but it would give us a couple of years breathing space to allow this to happen.
Robert.
So in terms of the timescale for a temporary permission, in that circumstance, it would be at your own discretion as a local review body to decide what would be a reasonable period of time. You need to justify it in the same way as you would for any other planning condition, and obviously making reference to policy H7 for temporary residential accommodation. You need to be satisfied that there was a logic and a need for that temporary accommodation. In relation to the 10-year issue, that would relate to a certificate of lawful use. So, for example, if you could reasonably demonstrate that the caravan had been in continuous use as a residence for a period of 10 years, you would then have quite high prospects of success if you applied for a certificate of lawfulness to the local authority. But the onus of proof in that scenario is on the applicant, so it's for the applicant to demonstrate in that case that there's been a lawful use for a 10-year period. I mean, that's not something that the application seeks here, that they're seeking permission for this caravan, whether that's permanent or on a temporary basis. I'm not entirely sure, but they're not looking for a certificate of lawfulness at this point in time. But like you say, there is a 10-year period, so if you could demonstrate continuous occupation as a residence, it may therefore, fall to be considered as lawful development in due course.
Chair, it was just based on the fact that Mr Butler, the land agent, had said he would be happy with a temporary period of 10 years, and that had been on the originally it was a permanent sort of thing, but they had moved it back during discussions. I think 10 years is a bit long if you're deciding. I might have been minded a 5-year period to allow them to bring forward plans for if it was a retirement home for Mr and Mrs Wright, to allow the daughter to move into the farmhouse or something, but I don't know if we've got the information to actually do that today, but I'll wait and see what other people say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Are we considering whether to give permission for this one particular unit caravan? Because bear in mind, caravans do have like a lifespan. So if, for example, there was a problem with this caravan, would they be able to, for the time that we give, put a very similar unit back on? I've lived in a caravan myself, so after a period of time, basically they're not functional and they have to be replaced.
Robert, you know?
Thanks, Chair. The application is for the use of land for the siting of a residential caravan, as well as the formation of a hard standing area and a septic tank. So it's not really the unit itself, it's the use of land for the siting of the residential caravan that requires permission. So on that basis, if you had a very similar caravan to what already has, or what would gain permission in that scenario, you could probably replace the existing one.
Yeah, if I could come back. So the time that we determine for is not dependent on the unit, but the actual use of the land. Thank you, I understand that.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? So, members, do you think we have enough information to enable a determination of the review today? Jim Dempster.
Thanks. So just to bring members' attention to page 43, the principle of development, and at the bottom of the paragraph where it says some supporting information being received, not all of the information previously requested and required to demonstrate a rural business need was received. This additional information requested by email dated the 3rd of January 2024, within which the housing and country supplement kinds of practice notes were outlined, explaining the following application for reference. Despite outlining and explaining what information was still required, this information was not submitted. So we don't have enough information, in my opinion, to consider a further extension, because we are not receiving the information officer requested. However, I'll leave that until later, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dempster. Anybody else? Councillor Hislop.
Chair, are we in session now? Oh.
Okay, we're in session, so Councillor Hislop.
Chair, that was the big point that sort of had me in the tipping point, was the point Councillor Dempster raised. They were asked for additional information. and it was a case of, well, they sent some along but not at all. I would have been minded maybe to put a temporary 5-year on, but because the fact that the information wasn't received or wasn't forthcoming, I would have to say that at this stage I would be in accordance with the recommendations of the officer to refuse this application.
And uphold the recommendations of the officer. Anybody any different on that? John? Sorry, Councillor Campbell.
It's okay, Chair. No, thanks very much. Yeah, I'm minded like Councillor Hislop here. I'm happy to second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I don't see anybody else, so therefore I would say that's a decision of the LRB. Tracy, can you next for that?
Thank you, Chair. So members have agreed they have sufficient information in front of them to determine the review today and have agreed to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application. Thanks, Chair.
We then go on to item 5 then, Northport Hospital, Portpatrick conditions 2 and 5 of approval of matters specified in conditions application in respect of erection of dwelling house, garage, outbuilding and formation of access. Approval of matters specified in conditions 3, layout, 4, design, 5, external appearance and 6, landscaping of planning permission in principle 23-2760 PIP. So, do you want to go through this?
Thanks, Chair. So yes, item 5, you've got your notice of review dated the 30th of April 2025, and that was received on the 14th of May 2025, pages 127 to 137. Got your report on handling and related correspondence on pages 141 to 283. The observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review are on pages 287 to 288. The approval of matters specified in conditions application form and associated support information registered as valid on the 20th of December 2024 and amended plans submitted on the 10th of February 2025 are on pages 291 to 379. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 13th of March 2025 is on pages 383 to 391. The relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Council's Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4 are on pages 395 to 427. Photos of the application site and locality can be found on pages 431 to 433. So the notice of approval of matters specified in conditions consent are A. Condition 2 of approval of matters specified in conditions application 24/2579/ARC. That notwithstanding the details shown on the approved drawings, no permission is hereby granted for the use of dry dash render. Prior to the installation of any external cladding, details of external materials shall be provided to and agreed in writing by the Planning Authority. These materials shall be either brickwork or western red, cedar, timber cladding or such alternative material as may be approved in writing by the Planning Authority. The dwelling house hereby granted planning permission shall not be occupied unless all elevations have been finished in such material as has been approved. These materials shall be maintained for the lifetime of the development. And B, condition 5 of approval of matters specified in conditions to application 24/2579/ARC, that notwithstanding the provisions of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Scotland Amended Order 2011 or such subsequent legislation as amends this order, no development failing within Part 1 of the Schedule 2, the said order shall take place to the dwelling house hereby granted permission or within its curtilage unless a further application for planning permission for such development has been submitted to and approved in writing by the Planning Authority. So on page 130, the applicant has asked that the review be dealt with by means of a review of the relevant information that has been provided without any further procedures. The grounds stated in the notice of review, pages 133 to 137, are 1. The two planning conditions that are subject to this review are inconsistent with Circular 4/1998. The effect of these conditions is 1. To prohibit the use of the render system in Galloway countryside, setting that would usually demand it. 2. Imposes controls over future maintenance, building improvements and alterations by further stipulating that the external appearance of the dwelling can never change. And 3. Householder permitted development rights are disapplied. The approach taken by the appointed officer is overzealous. Fundamentally, the applicant considers that the attachment of conditions 2 and 5 do not meet the standard tests and asks the review body to remove the conditions in order that upon completion of the intended development of land, the approved dwelling can be occupied and enjoyed without impairment. In other words, when the house is built in accordance with the approved details and later complete and occupied, the householder should be able to modify, extend or improve the dwelling, also replace windows and doors, and to garden and landscape in the normal way within the limitations of law. Conditions 2 and 5 are opposed because they seek unreasonably to disapply permitted development rights and limit householder freedoms to occupy and enjoy their dwelling without undue interference. The practical consequences of the planning decision is to impose undue and unnecessary planning controls forever. Even relatively minor works to the dwelling or its curtilage will require planning permission. For example, a patio area, conservatory or garden shed would require express consent. While the approach might be appropriate in very limited and special circumstances, the appointed officer would expect to set out reasoning and justification. In this case, the reasoning offered is simply not adequate, so the conditions should be deleted. The planning authority is under a duty to apply the 6 tests and employ planning conditions only when it is necessary and reasonable. The 2 planning conditions under review are unduly prescriptive because they would prohibit the use of render system or cladding applications that are widely employed locally because they are attractive, weatherproof and durable in exposed coastal locations. The disapplication of permitted development rights will unreasonably fetter future scope to improve or alter the dwelling without making further planning applications. The list of development plan policies are on pages 395 to 427. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are looking carefully at the wording of conditions 2 and 5 of the application under consideration. Do members consider that these conditions both meet the 6 tests set out in Planning Circular 4/1998, the use of conditions in planning permissions? Is each condition considered to be necessary? Is each condition considered to be relevant to planning? Is each condition to be relevant to the development to be permitted? Is each condition considered to be enforceable? Is each condition considered to be precise? And is each condition considered to be reasonable in all other respects? What would be the effect of the deletion of conditions 2 and 5 of this decision, as is sought by the applicant, and would the proposal then comply with the terms of the development plan without the imposition of conditions 2 and 5? Is this a case whereby these conditions are necessary to make an otherwise unacceptable form of development acceptable? Would the proposed development without conditions 2 and 5 conflict with the terms of the development plan and associated design guidance? Would the removal of these conditions result in an unsympathetic form of development when considering the planning history and original form of development at this location? Would condition 5 serve to ensure continued control of the extent of further building at this location? And would that be necessary to retain the character and appearance of the proposed development in a sympathetic manner to the original structure that was located here prior to its demolition? How much weight would members wish to attach to the planning history within the appointed officer's comments and the report on handling when making a determination in this case? It is noted within the decision notices on page 383 to 391 that the stated reason for condition 2 is to define the terms of the permission and to preserve the character of the site, and that for condition 5 the stated reason is to preserve the character and appearance of the site. Is dry render considered to be an inappropriate external wall treatment for this proposed development at this particular location? If it is considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, How would this affect the wording of conditions 2 and/or 5 and associated reasoning? So having outlined your papers, it falls to the local review body to determine whether you have sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed that no representations will be heard today. As with the previous item, you have the same options. Decide that you have sufficient information before you to determine the review today. Request further information in the form of written representation specifying who would be providing the information and what information you are seeking and who would provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited and on what matters. Resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information, they have full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. Your planning advisor is still present. He has not been the case officer or the appointed officer for this application and will provide independent advice as required on matters of planning policy, law or process. And your solicitor is also still present, and she will act independently if you require advice on matters of law. So I'll now pass back to the Chair and ask him to lead the debate to seek whether members have sufficient information before you determine the review. Thank you.
Okay, as I did in the last one, I think I'll get the pictures shown first. But first of all, Laura, can I ask a question on conditions that are sent out to applicants with, permission to build whatever they're going to build? It's my understanding that if those conditions were wrong, that the legal department would say, you need to think about that again.
No. The legal department's not always involved in the framing of conditions. As this was a delegated report, the legal department would only have been involved if the particular officer had asked for legal insight in it, which isn't the case. Whereas legal sit here at local review body or at planning application committee and would maybe have input at that time. In the normal run-of-the-mill delegated reports, no, legal would not.
Robert, we'll go through the pictures.
Thanks, Chair. Just to confirm, these replicate the pictures you have in your papers in pages 431 to 433. So there's 5 pictures. Again, I haven't been to the site myself, and I've been supplied these by the case officer. So the first picture is a view from within the site looking north, so you can see the building under construction. Second is a view from within the site looking southeast. Thirdly, a view of the development site looking northwest. A view of the development site looking southwest. And then finally, a view of the development site looking west itself. So this gives an idea of the present state of construction. I don't have a date in these pictures, unfortunately. Thanks, Chair.
It must have been a really good day because the sun was shining on that particular day, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, any members got any questions on the photographs? Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sure I heard Robert say that he doesn't have a date on the images. From what I see of the images, that looks like a midwinter shot. So these images were probably taken about 7-8 months ago, in which case has the buildings. If we were to see these buildings in a modern or an up-to-date photograph, would they look substantially different to what we see here?
Would you have any idea, Robert?
I don't know if they've commenced with work since the application was submitted or since the pictures were taken, which I think is the question. So, sorry, I don't know the answer to that one, Chair, unfortunately.
Oh, thank you, Chair. No, that's fine. I understand that if we don't have the information, we have to go into what we've got. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. We'll go through the index of context. And the first part is Laura, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If it's of use, on page 133 of your documents, it is stated that there was after commencement of development in October 2021, I'm reading from the fourth paragraph down, the developer was asked to stop the operations, and then the next paragraph it states that the applicant complied with that direction to stop. So the indication is that work has stopped there.
Thank you. Did you hear that, Tony, all right?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Laura.
Okay, report on handling, page 141 to 283. Any points of clarification? Councillor Hislop?
See if I can find that. Page 146, reasons. Point 2, to define the terms of this permission and preserve the character of the site. Is that based on its historic use, the character of the site?
Robert?
Yes, that's my reading of it. Excuse me. I mean, if you look at the delegated report, when I looked at the papers beforehand, so that's on pages 141 to 149, that there is quite a lot made of the planning history. So if you look at that, I think it's in paragraph 1.2, it starts. You've got a planning permission for the conversion of the building on a site to form a three-bedroom dwelling house. So that was conversion of an original wartime building known as the Hush Hush. So that was 15P1101. And that followed on from the original decision at this location, which was 08P146, and that's summarised in the report at 1.5. So that was a decision taken, I think, by Wigtonshire Area Committee at the time to grant this building a planning permission to change the use of it and alter it and extend it subject to conditions in a Section 75 obligation. But 15P1101 took over from that, if you like. You then had an application, a more recent application, 181823 FUL, which again related to alterations and change of use of the former military building to form a dwelling house, and there were alterations and extension to that as well as the septic tank, soakaway, ground mounted air source heat pump, etc., etc. So that was granted subject to conditions 12th of April 2019. You've then got a situation where the original building has been lost, if you like. So because the original building has been lost, the permission falls because there isn't something to change the use of anymore. And then you've got a planning permission in principle application, which is 232760 PIP. So when I look at the delegated report, it's clear to me that what the case officer is trying to do and the appointed officer is to try to get this new build development, if you like, to replicate the character and appearance of the original building that was at that site as much as is reasonably possible. And I think the report actually covers that fairly well. So for me, it's looking at the particular context of this site, the planning history, what was previously present at this, and although it's a new build proposal rather than conversion of an existing building, I think the intention there is clearly to try and retain something of what was the original character of the building that was at that location. So that was the real reason for the condition about the finishes, and the other one in relation to removal of PD rights, again, is an attempt to try and keep control over any changes that may happen which will affect the character and appearance of that building.
Were the conditions that they're asking to be changed implemented on the 23 PIP one, or is this conditions that are being implemented on the 24, is it ARC you call it, application? Because under page 145, archaeology, the council archaeologist has acknowledged that any further conditions on historic environment grounds would be disproportionate in this instance. So were they already on it and anything additional would be bad, or is it these conditions that have been implemented in this application that are actually, according to the archaeologists, disproportionate?
The conditions you've got on this permission, I mean, you've got the permission in principle application, which relates to this one, which establishes the principle of a dwelling house at this location. So that is with the reference 232760 PIP. Now, when you look at the delegated report on page 144 at paragraph 4.5, there was condition 7 put in that planning permission in principle, which states that notwithstanding the terms of conditions 3 to 6 above, which are what are known as the reserved matters, conditions and matters of detail, the site layout, the design and external appearance of the dwelling house and associated landscaping shall reflect that previously approved under planning permission reference 181823 FUL. So that is the guiding principle, if you like, for the following application, which is the approval of matters specified in conditions, which is the case that you're looking at today. The conditions that are imposed are as per the decision notice, which appears in your paper. There's conditions and reasons on pages 383 to 391. So those conditions relate to this application, and the case officer has decided to impose these, and that's been endorsed by the appointed officer. So that's the appointed officer's decision. So let me just double check the location of this. Yeah, it's 383. Sorry, just bear with me, Chair. I'm struggling to navigate this. So you've got the conditions on page 386. So there's 5 conditions, and then you've got the reasons for those conditions on pages 386, going over to page 387. So those are specific to this application, but they're very much guided by condition 7 of the planning permission in principle. And that's really the key reason why they've been imposed. When I read it, the issue with the council archaeologist, again returning to the delegated report, you've got the council archaeologist's consultation response in page 151. Basically I'm reading that as kind of tantamount to no objection. I'll just revisit that just now. So it's page 141. Archaeology, page 145, and that's expressing regret at the loss of the original building because it's gone now. But yeah, the archaeologist feels that while there were archaeological conditions attached to previous permissions, due to the extent of the works already undertaken on site, any further conditions on historic environment grounds would be disproportionate in this instance, so they're not recommending any, basically just expressing regret that the building has been lost. Hope that helps, Chair.
Well, it just sort of, do the conditions that we are being asked to look at today, were they on the original PIP? I know it says that conditions 3 to 6 in paragraph 4.5 you can take into consideration, but are we implementing additional conditions, or was it specifically that, I know that the original building had, was it brick finish or something like that, and that might be in the dry dash render, but was there a condition to say that you had lost development rights, permitted development rights in the original one, or is that an additional one which, according to the archaeologist for the site, would be disproportionate?
The 2 conditions you're looking at are additional to the permission in principle. The permission in principle application looked at the principle of development at this site rather than the detail. The following application for matters specified in conditions attached to the plan and permission in principle is looking at matters of detail, and the conditions relate to that application. So it's conditions 2 and 5 of the approval of matters specified in conditions application, so that those relate to matters of detail that are assessed after the kind of principle of the development is considered at the permission in principle stage.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else? No. So observations of the appointed officer of the application, as you noticed, review pages 287 to 288. Any points of clarification on that? Okay. Approval of matters specified in conditions application form, associated plans and supporting information registered as valid on 20th of December 2024 and amended plans on the 10th of February 2025, which is pages 291 to 379. Any points of clarification on that? Decision letter then for Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 13th of March 2025, which is pages 383 to 391. Any points of clarification on that? We've got the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, pages 395 to 427. Any points of clarification on that? Okay, and then we've already seen the photographs. So, members, do we have enough information to make a decision today? I would say we would do. Okay. We're now, Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, sorry, fingers are still dry, but yeah, I would say we have enough information. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Members, we're now in session. Do we agree with the officer's recommendations? Or uphold the officer's recommendations?
Chair, with regard to the appearance of the building under condition 2, I think it is right that we should look at that, but with regard to the principle of removing the delegated, or the permitted development rights, I don't know why that is put in, because I think the first one was based on the fact that that's what the kind of house you are looking at previously, but as the archaeological officer says, that's been lost, and he didn't think it was proportionate to put additional ones on. And I think I would be minded to agree with the 2 being left in, but I think item 5, the condition to remove permitted development, I think that's a bit overzealous, I think was the words that the applicant used. I don't know why we would put that one in, and I think it is disproportionate at this stage.
So are you saying that you would uphold in part?
Yes.
So there's a decision, there's a motion to uphold the officer's decision, and there's an amendment to uphold the officer's decision in part, which we would remove condition number 5. There's a couple of people wanting to speak on this, so I'll ask Jim Dempster first, and then Tony Beretti.
Thanks, Chair. Just support the proposal to uphold the officer's decision in full. I think we often, when certain locations are of a particularly sensitive nature, that the planning authority quite rightly want to ensure that any further development is in line with what would be expected in a situation such as that. So I would agree with the individual that put forward the proposal to agree with the officer's decision in full. Thank you.
That was me, Jim. So if it's you know, the motion would be uphold the decision in full. The amendment would be, if it's seconded, to uphold it in part, but remove condition 5.
Happy to accept that, Chair.
Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Looking at some of the line drawings, and certainly the ones on 373, and I'm sure within your capacity of having been in the military as well as myself, that these kind of structures are easily recognisable by the fact they've got a flat roof. And clearly at the time, for the purpose of the war effort, the building would have been there for observation and radar, as it said, and anything else, and aircraft identification. The building would not have been that visible from the land because there would have been restrictions. This building, if you were to look at it from about 10, 15 nautical miles out, I would doubt very much you would actually be able to tell much about the actual building, other than just it was building with a flat roof. So I'm not. I'm sort of got a foot in both camps here. This kind of building was never supposed to be designed to be beautiful. It was designed for a function. And I think, as the archaeologist has said in his deliverance, that it was a pity that the original building of one of only two that existed of this design has gone. And I think this maybe is an effort to at least try and give an impression of what was there, rather than how it should have been built. Because frankly, if it had been built to the original standard, I certainly wouldn't want to be living in it in winter. At the moment, I'm just waiting to hear other members, but haven't quite made up my mind yet, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, just so I can get my head around this, when the original application that came in to convert the existing building, did it have permitted development rights, or all the way through some of those other applications that come in, whether it was for planning in principle in 23 or whenever, just so I can get my head around that, because if the already established permitted development rights, if it was a conversion and it went ahead, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about, you know, condition 5, which is what Councillor Hislop's sort of brought up. And if the archaeology in paragraph 4.7, it's unfortunate that that final sentence is in there, because I think that's where Councillor Hislop's coming from on that particular point. But if we can get some clarity that previous applications for this development had permitted development rights. Thanks.
Robert.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, looking at the planning history that I kind of highlighted in the delegated report, I think the key application here is 181823 FUL, which is the most recent one, which was conversion of the building before it was lost. Now, I'm looking at the decision notice, I've looked it up in the planning portal, and there is a condition 5 on that planning permission that says that notwithstanding the provisions of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Scotland Amendment Order 2011 or such subsequent legislation as amends this order, no development falling within Part 1 of the schedule to the said order shall take place to the dwelling house hereby granted planning permission or within its cartilage, unless a further application for planning permission for such development has been submitted to and approved by the planning authority. And the stated reason for that condition is in order that the planning authority may retain control over any future development which has the potential to impact on the character, appearance, historic interest and setting of the building as a wartime relic. So that's really the stated objective of removing permitted development rights, is to allow a level of control to kind of preserve those aspects of the building as it was converted. Now, the 23 planning permission in principle application just establishes the principle of the dwelling house at this location. It's not considering matters of detail, so I wouldn't expect to see a permitted development rights condition on that permission in principle, but obviously the case in front of you has been determined and it does have that permitted development rights condition. Obviously the legislation has moved on since the 18 application, but it's trying to achieve the same objective. That's certainly the way I read it.
Thank you. And so we're saying in one sentence that we had control on the application in 18, whatever it was, 181824, but now we've denied that with this application. No. Have we still got control?
The 18 one was a planning in principle, so the principle was...
No, that was a forward, Chair, sorry.
Yeah.
232760 was the planning in principle,
right,
which came after the 18/1823 stroke full.
So the previous one to this one was planning in principle. All right, sorry. So planning in principle, you get the principle of yes or no. You can do whatever your intention is with the principle of what building you're going to put in it. The next one would be a planning principle, a planning application in full, which this time was decided by an officer. The determination was decided by the officer, and they would put the conditions in. So the planning in principle thing is, I think it's a, you know, it's a red herring. The conditions is the one we're looking at here as opposed to anything else. And there's two, at the moment, there's one motion that's been seconded by Councillor Dempster. I was put forward myself to uphold the officer's decision. There's been an amendment placed by Councillor Hislop that we uphold it in part, but take away the condition number 5. Now, this needs a seconder for that, then we can go to the vote. I'll bring Jim Dempster in first.
Thanks, Chair. Just to refer you and other members to page 287, the observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's notice of review, and in particular section 2, where it says detailed within paragraph 4.6 of the report of handling, the premise of a new built dwelling was only considered acceptable if the dwelling was to reflect the development previously consented under planning reference 18/1823 full, and the industrial nature of the original building, and therefore during the assessment the introduction of dry dash finder was not considered appropriate, and planning permission was only granted on the basis that a condition was attached to any consent requiring materials to be agreed to align with previous consent. So what the planning officer is trying to do is retain some element of what was the original structure. And I'm content with your proposal, Chairman. I just wanted to make that point to members.
Okay, thank you. So, do we have a seconder for Councillor Hislop's amendment? Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Hislop.
Okay. So, Tracy will go over to you for the motion and the amendment.
Thanks, Chair. So I'd noted down the motion and the amendment was to vary the decision and remove condition 5, but sorry, Councillor Hislop, could you just clarify your reasons for the variation? Just I've not noted them down here,
Well,
sorry.
it's based on the fact that under 4.7 of the planning officer's report on page 145, the last sentence says that whilst archaeological conditions were attached to previous consents, due to the extent of the works already undertaken on site, the council archaeologist has acknowledged that any further conditions on historic environment grounds would be disproportionate in this instance. However, I do agree with Councillor Dempster's point that he made there at the end. I think the actual design of the building needs to be maintained, but if someone, the cladding, etc., but if someone wants to put in a garage or put in a porch or something in future years that would be permitted development, I don't see why that would need to come back here. So that's the only reason I would like condition 5 removed. And my understanding from the officer's reading of the previous condition, it was to protect the building that was there. That building has been removed, so therefore I don't see why it's appropriate to put that one in. That was my reason for it.
Chair, through yourself, I wonder if it would be helpful to Councillor Hislop if Robert indicated just how far the building itself could be changed if the permitted development rights were removed. My understanding is that it wouldn't only be outbuildings, but it would also be changes to the fabric of the building in itself, such as glazing. But Robert's better placed to explain why the appointed officer would take that step.
Give us your wisdom, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. If you'd asked me about 25 years ago, I would almost know this legislation without having to look at it. I'm a bit rusty, to say the least, given my recent experience over the last 10 years or so. Permitted development rights for householders, it allows you to put buildings in the curtilage without planning permission. I've got no idea what kind of size you're allowed these days. But that would be things like garages, summer houses, sheds, that kind of thing. It allows you to form hard-standing in the curtilage of your dwelling house. It allows you to erect fences and walls. It allows you to extend your dwelling house without needing planning permission in certain circumstances, putting dormer windows and roof lights and so on and so forth. It actually, I mean, again, I don't have a kind of rough guide to hand here, but it does allow you to do quite a lot to the original character of the property, and it's often used in cases where you get a planning application to convert an old agricultural building and you end up with an outcome that looks agreeable and accords with your design policy, and you think, great. And it's done as a means of preventing someone coming along and running amok with permitted development rights and kind of unpicking the good work, if you like, that's gone into the steading conversion. So it's designed to kind of preserve character and appearance as much as anything else, so that you keep the character of the original building, and then it's not subject to change under permitted development rights, which would be unacceptable. And there's various examples across the region. I mean, back many years ago, box dormers used to be permitted development, and the result being you've got a lot of box dormers compromising various streets and various towns and villages in the area, and it's something that, you know, it can cause a lot of change to the character and appearance of buildings. I'm not able to specify it, like I say, because it's not my area of expertise anymore, but you can actually do a lot of change using permitted development rights, so in other words, without needing planning permission.
Okay, shall we go to the vote? First, you'll tell us what the motion is and what the amendment is.
Thanks, Chair. So the motion proposed by the Chair, seconded by Councillor Dempster, was to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application. The amendment proposed by Councillor Hislop, seconded by Councillor Campbell, was to vary the decision of the appointed officer, removing condition 5 on the grounds that it's acknowledged by the archaeologist that any further condition on historic environment grounds would be disproportionate in this instance, and the original condition was in place to protect the previously demolished building, and removal of this condition will allow for permitted development in the future. I'll just check if Robert and Laura are content with that. Thank you. So I'll move to the vote. Chair?
Motion.
Councillor Barretti?
Motion.
Councillor Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Lowe?
Amendment.
So it's 3 votes to the motion, 3 votes to the amendment. Chair, would you like to exercise your right to the casting vote?
I'll go with the motion. No change in my mind.
Thank you, Chair. So members have agreed to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application.
Okay, members, now going to item 6, which is 3 Smithy Road, Stranraer, refusal of planning permission for erection of single-storey extension to north-east elevation of dwelling house. Do you want to take us through this one?
Thanks, Chair. So item 6, you've got your index of contents here. Number 1, the notice of review dated the 15th of May 2025. And that was received on the same day, pages 441 to 449. Got your report on handling and related correspondence in pages 453 to 461. The observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review are on pages 465 to 466. The planning application form submitted on the 13th of January 2025 and supporting information, pages 469 to 487. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 28th of February 2025, pages 491 to 494. The relevant extracts from the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4 on pages 497 to 519. And the photos of the application site and locality are on pages 523 to 524. Just to note, Chair, that the documents list on page 437 in your papers where it mentions the comments from the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer. That should be removed. There was no comments from the applicant's agent. So that was just an error on that one page, but the rest of the documents are correct. So the grounds for refusal are on pages 492. They are that the proposed front extension is considered to be unacceptable by virtue of a cumulative impact from inappropriate materials and finishes proposed, combined with the inappropriate scale and massing arrangement. The proposal is therefore considered to be contrary to National Planning Framework 4, Policy 14, Design Quality in Place, and Policy 16, Quality Homes, and Local Development Plan 2, Policy OP2, Design Quality and Placemaking. Policy 88, Alterations and Extensions to Dwellings, and the Supplementary Guidance, Alterations and Extensions to Dwellings. On page 444, the applicant has asked that the review be dealt with by means of a review of the relevant information that has been provided without any further procedures. So the grounds stated in the Notice of Review Statement, pages 447 to 449, and in summary, it is stated that the scale and massing arrangements for the extension is inappropriate. This in itself is at best a vague and not clearly defined statement which seems to be founded on subjective interpretation. If we attempt to try and give tangible meaning to this statement in terms of numbers, I think what the statement is trying to say that the volume of the proposed extension equates to 82.6 cubic metres and the volume of the existing house equates to 654 cubic metres. This effectively means that the proposed extension equates to only 12.5% of the volume of the existing dwelling house. If the council is refusing extensions to the front of houses with a proportional volume increase as low as 12.5% on an unremarkable 1970s private housing estate, then this represents prohibition of any viable and practical extensions to the front of any dwelling house in the region. It is claimed that the finishing material are inappropriate, which is taken to mean out of place in the context of this application. UPVC cladding has been extensively throughout this housing estate for many years. Numerous front extensions in the locality are visible from the applicant's property. These show that the definition of appropriate materials and finishes within the context of this estate are extensively varied. Materials and finishes proposed by the applicant are already being used in close proximity to this dwelling house and also more widely throughout the same estate. This application has been processed unfairly and without thorough assessment, and the decision taken should not be upheld. Development plan policies are listed on pages 497 to 519. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are: does the development comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the development fail to comply with LDP2, policies OP2, H8 and the guidance set out in the relevant adopted LDP2 supplementary guidance documents? In relation to the design of the proposed development, does the development fail to comply with MPF4, policies 14 and 16? In particular, do members agree that the materials and finishes proposed would be unacceptable at this location in combination with the proposed scale and massing arrangement? Is the proposed considered to be inappropriate in terms of its scale, massing, materials and finishes in combination? If it is considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision and make reference to the relevant determining development policies beyond those stated within the delegated report and the decision notice, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? So I've outlined with the documents within your papers. Again, it's up to the local review body to determine if you have sufficient information to consider the review. No representations will be heard from any party today, and you have the same options available. Decide you have sufficient information to determine the review today. Request further information in the form of written representation stating precisely the information you're seeking and who should provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters. I'll resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. You can resolve that you have sufficient information to proceed with the review today, and then you can have full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. Your planning advisor is still present. He was not the case officer or other appointed officer for this application, and your solicitor is also still present if you require any advice on matters of law. So I now pass back to the Chair and ask him to lead the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Robert, I think we'll go through the photographs first before we go through the rest of the papers.
Thanks, Chair. Just before I do so, just to note there's an error on page 437 of the papers where it reads you have listed documents numbers 1 to 8. Number 4 doesn't apply because there haven't been any comments from the applicant's agent, so please strike number 4 out, and subsequently 5, 6, 7 and 8 that are listed become 4, 5, 6 and 7. But that's the only change required to the papers. Moving to the photographs now, these replicate those that are in your papers at pages 523 to 524. Again, they've been provided by the case officer with the captions, and I haven't been to the application site myself. So there's 4 of these. First one is a view of 3, 5 and 7 Smithy Road, and these are the frontages. Second is a view of the wider Smithy Road street view from the south. And you can see on the left-hand side, you've got 3 Smithy Road there with the camper van outside, so that relates to the building you can see on the left-hand side there. The third view I've got is a view of the existing principal elevation onto 3 Smithy Road. And finally, Smithy Road even, street view from the north, showing the neighbouring extension, which you can see on the right-hand side there. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Any questions on the photographs? Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was quite useful that Robert pointed out there that on page 524 and certainly on photograph 4, there's been an extension. And looking at that design, Robert, that second house there, the original design would be closer to the one that we're discussing. Would that be correct?
Yes, Chair, that's my reading of it. It's clearly an extension to that dwelling house.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let's go through the index of contents in. We've got the notice of review dated 15th of May 2025, pages 441 to 449. Any points of clarification on? We've then got the report and handling determined under delegated powers and related to correspondence, pages 453 to 461. Any points of clarification on that? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Just for a point of clarification, on page 455, a number of paragraphs mentions the supplementary guidance, but I was looking on page 507 where it says relevant LDP2 supplementary guidance documents, and there's 2 mentions there, but no documents. I don't know if that's relevant. I mean, the delegated officer has put sort of information in some of those paragraphs. For example, 4.7, it states other than porches, extensions to the front dwellings, blah, blah, blah. So there is extracts there, but I'm just wondering why we don't have the documents.
Happy to answer that, Chair. As part of the development plan, the supplementary guidance can be quite bulky, especially when you've got 2 or 3 that are of relevance. So it was a kind of operational decision taken not to actually publish supplementary guidance as part of the papers. However, because we're using Microsoft Teams, as we did at a recent meeting, we can actually get that supplementary guidance document up on the screen in front of us if that's helpful. I mean, it is mentioned, it is relevant to the decision. It's mentioned in the delegated report. It's part of the development plan, so it is key to your consideration. So if it would help, I'm sure we could get that document up and share it, which would aid your discussion. But the reason why is just logistical. It's so that your local review body papers don't get even bigger than they are at the moment.
That's fine, thanks, Chair.
We'll need a donkey to bring all the papers in and things like that, yeah. Anyway, observation of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent notice of review, 465 to 466. Anything on that? No. Decision letter, sorry, planning application, is that the one I done, 469 to 487? Yeah, the decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 28th of February 2025, pages 491 to 494. Any points of clarification on that? Councillor Bretty?
Yeah, I'm afraid I may have to go back one because I wasn't quite certain what numbers you were calling out. So if you can indulge me, looking at page 475 and 477, which are the drawings of the previous or the current and then proposed design, there is in fact there are no indications of dimensions. So I'm trying to look at and gauge the dimensions from both pages to see what they were. Is there dimensions at all anywhere?
Chair, your best reference point is probably the plan that is on, it's a floor plan, and it's on page 479 of your papers. So you've got the floor plan there, and you can see various dimensions shown. For example, the projection of the extension would be 943, and then you've got dimensions from side to side. For example, where you see that it says footpath, you can see the dimension relating to the width of the window, then the other part, until you get to the front door, if you like, then you've got the other part, and then the proposed garage. So that actually gives you dimensions. It also gives you the kind of depth of the garage at 3.949 metres. So that's probably your most helpful one.
Yeah, Chair, sadly I haven't got a magnifying glass on me, but from what I can see, and maybe you can just verify this, Robert, the extension that we're talking about from the original out from the front face of the wall is about 2.1 metres, if I can see. If it looks like 2.1 metres. That'd be about right.
That's correct, Chair. That's how I'm reading it. If you look at it on the left-hand side, the projection there is coming out 2.1 metres. It's shown as 2,100, so it's in millimetres. But then when you look at the other side, on the garage side, the projection there is 3.949 metres.
Yeah, so
yeah.
So the garage is just basically just being extended, and because it is still a garage, and therefore the door of the garage has to be extended out anyway. And the component which is being built is from the front is essentially 2.1 metres plus the extension from where the current door entrance is. That's nice. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, that the shower room, if I take it, is now taking possession of what used to be the front door. Would that be correct, Robert?
Yes, that's the way I'm reading it as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll then go on to the decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 20th of February 25, pages 491 to 494. Any points of clarity in that? We've then got the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, pages 4975, 19. And we've also got, we've already seen the photographs of that particular site. So, members, do you think we have enough information to make a decision today? I'm not seeing anything, so I would suggest that is a yes. Members, we're now in session. So do we agree with the uphold the, sorry, what, Councillor Beretti?
Thank you, Chair. I think from the image on page 524, where an extension has already been granted, or hopefully was granted to a neighbour, and I would almost be loathed to not accept this one, because if this is just an improvement to the fabric of the building, irrespective of whether or not the garage is going to be slightly elongated, I can't see how it's going to take up an awful lot of the ground in front of it. And looking at the camper van image, which is on page 523, these camper vans are nearly 5.5 meters in length. So that there's ample space still to the side of that construction or potential construction to allow vehicle access. And I don't think it would look I don't think it would actually look any different, given that the current house next to it has also had an extension. So I would be for giving, or say, overturning the officer decision.
So can you give the planning reasons for that?
I would say an improvement of building fabric, and I would also I'd say that you're increasing the efficiency of the building by not having probably putting a door which is far more secure than the current one. But I'm sure Robert can help me out, because yes, thank you, Chair.
Robert, can you give advice, please?
I mean, what I can do, Chair, is certainly highlight the reasons for the refusal, which are in the decision notice on page 491. So I think the first focus would be on the reasons why the appointed officer refused it. What was it they found contradicted policy and merited refusal in the absence of other material considerations? So the appointed officer's view was that the proposed front extension is considered to be unacceptable by virtue of cumulative impact from inappropriate materials and finishes proposed, combined with the inappropriate scale and massing arrangement. So I think if you're saying that you don't think the materials and finishes are inappropriate and you don't think the scale and massing is inappropriate, you've then got to look at the relevant policies and decide if this is a departure from the terms of the development plan, in which case, what are your reasons for departing from the development plan, or are you saying that this actually complies with the relevant policies in your view that are listed in that decision? But I mean, basically, if you don't find the materials and finishes inappropriate, you don't find the scale and massing inappropriate, I think you should articulate that as part of your decision. But like I say, you have to decide if this is a departure from policy, or if you actually think it complies with it.
No, I don't think the massing is on is out. I think if we could, even if I would put a condition to say that the materials should reflect the structures that are already there. I don't know what reason they've made to choose the materials that they have. So my reflection would be to be allowed it, but to have materials which are in character with the existing buildings.
I'll just check with Laura if that's inappropriate.
If I've understood correctly, what's being suggested is that the materials would be different from that stated in the application. Is that what Councillor Beretti is asking for?
From images that are on the plan, it looks as if the materials are completely different to the materials that are already existing in that housing stock that's either in the housing or adjacent. So why has the applicant decided to do that as opposed to adopt similar materials that are already pre-existing? That's what I'm saying. So
Tony, can I just come in here, because we cannot put an application in for the person that wants the application in. And we can't change it. He's put the application in with what he's got, and there's been a decision made by an officer on what the application... We can't say change it. We've either got to uphold or change it to we think isn't contrary to the National Plan 4 policy, design policy and quality in place. It isn't contrary to Local Development Plan 2 policy OP2, and it isn't contrary to policy H8. So we can't say what they're going to put in, but they've put the application in with the materials that they've actually said. So I'm a bit concerned that we're going, you know, out of a remit here.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll not retire. I'll hold on until other members have spoken, and if the consensus is to refuse, then fine, I'll accept that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Campbell, you wanted in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, when you first look at this, and you know, and you go through the report, and especially in 4.10, it says that, you know, it gives a relevance between a neighbour's property and this property here. For example, a neighbour extended his garage, and it extends 1.65 metres in front of the main building, whereas this particular application is saying it's 2.1 metres in front of the main building in itself. I know it doesn't seem a lot, you know, what would that be, 400, about a foot and a half in old money, I would suggest. It doesn't seem a lot, but for me, when you look at the plans on page 477, and you look at the frontage of that house, it actually takes up a huge chunk of, you know, the main building, and it becomes the focal point, shall we say, and it takes away from the original building. So the reason for refusing this by the case officer in the first instance, it was inappropriate scale, massive, and you know, and I would agree with that particular part. Inappropriate materials, well, I mean, sometimes you know, we can leave that up to officers, you know, if we do approve things. But I think on this instance, it's the correct decision. I would uphold it.
Thank you very much, and I would second that. Anybody other want to support Councillor Brett here? It doesn't look like it, Councillor Bretty, so the decision is to uphold the officer's recommendation in the report. Do you want to say anything?
No, it's to me it was a 50-50, and respect the views of my fellow officers.
Glad to see I'm a fellow officer rather than a fellow councillor. There you go. Okay.
I meant a fellow councillor.
Tracy, do you want to see the decision of the ILRB?
Thanks, Chair. So members agreed they had enough information to determine the review today and have upheld the decision of the appointed officer and refused the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 7, which is land to north west of Lockhouse Tower, Moffat. Refusal of planning permission in principle for erection of dwelling house class 9 and detached domestic garage and installation of septic tank and soakaway. 241764 planning in principle. Do you want to take us through this one?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, item 7, you've got your notice of review dated the 15th of May 2025 and received on 16th of May 2025, pages 531 to 536. You've then got your report on handling, determined under delegated powers and related correspondence on pages 539 to 581. The observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review are on pages 585 to 586. Then the comments of the applicant's agent on observations of the appointed officer on pages 589 to 591. Then the planning application form submitted on the 10th of September 2024, associated plans and supporting information are on pages 595 to 613. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 24th of April 2025 is on pages 617 to 620. The relevant extracts from the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4 are on pages 623 to 653, and the photos of the application site and locality are on pages 657 to 658. You were also issued a supplement pack on the 9th of September, which contained sensitive information, and if members wish to discuss this information in detail, then we would be required to consider the adoption for the resolution to exclude the public under paragraph 6 of the Local Government Scotland Act. So just for members to bear that in mind. The grounds for refusal are on pages 617 to 618, and those are that the proposal is contrary to National Planning Framework 4 Policy 17 and Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 Policy H3 and the related supplementary guidance, which permit the erection of new houses in the countryside only in special circumstances identified in the development plan, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. Specifically, it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that there is an essential need in operational terms for a dwelling house in this location. On page 532, the applicant has asked that the review be dealt with by means of 1. The review of the relevant information and further written submissions, and 2. A site inspection. So the grounds stated in the notice of review, pages 535 to 536, in summary are: the accommodation is essential to meet the needs of the farm and business, and it is not required because of personal circumstances. The proposal complies quite clearly with MPF 4 Policy 17 Part 5 and LDP 2 Policy H3. The original farmhouse in Steddon did not form part of the farm when it was purchased by Mr and Mrs Hislop in 2018, as the original house and Steddon was sold off by the previous owner during late 1980. The labour calculation for the unit in the Labour Requirement Report is based on the SAC Farm Management Handbook of 2023-24. The SEER adds a standard labour data for agriculture and horticultural activities, and the same calculation method has been applied to the need for 2.6 labour units at Lockhouse Farm. The stock at Lockhouse is wintered at the other farms owned by the applicant because there is no steading at Lockhouse at present, but this will change once the building has been erected and an additional full-time worker employed. There is considerable shortfall in labour on the farm, and this shortage has been overcome by good but difficult management and the use of unskilled part-time labour and contractors when required. But this arrangement cannot continue because of the difficulty in sourcing experienced part-time agricultural workers. It would be the owner's preference to employ at least another 2 or 3 experienced agricultural workers, but unfortunately there is a severe shortage of this type of labour, not only locally but throughout Scotland and beyond. It's hoped that if the application for the house is approved, it would attract an experienced and specialist agricultural worker, which would reduce the pressure on the current workforce. The 4-bedroom dwelling house at Sternies Hill forms part of the farm diversification scheme and is not available for agricultural worker, as it does not form part of the operations of the agricultural farm and business. The original farmhouse and steading was not severed from the farm, but the current owner, as severance took place in late 1980 by the previous owners before the applicant purchased the farm in 2018. Mr Hislop, who looked after the stock on Lockhouse Farm unit until his recent retirement, resides in his owned home at Palace-now, which is approximately 2 miles from the farm. The Labour Requirement Report has been prepared by an experienced and qualified farming consultancy and is an extremely important document which provides accurate and detailed information on the farm operations, and is therefore unreasonable to describe it as useful, as it is much more important than this. The need for animal welfare, emergencies, lambing, calving and all other related matters are clearly set out in the supporting documents and in the Labour Requirement Report. There are no other opportunities for a worker to reside closer to Lockhouse Farm, as the original farmhouse did not form part of the farm when it was purchased by the applicant. Because of the current difficulties being experienced in the farming industry throughout the country, an application for a house for a full-time worker on an essential need basis should be supported to enable farming businesses to expand and meet the many challenges in the industry, and also to enable the viability of the farming business to continue. The value of the stock at Lockhouse Farm can be as much as £500,000, and for security and animal welfare it is important that there is an experienced agricultural worker resident on the farm at all times to ensure that welfare and security of the stock and machinery. You've then got development plan policies, pages 623 to 653. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are: this is an application for planning permission in principle. As such, there are no detailed matters relating to the proposed dwelling house. Scottish Government Plan Circular 3/2022, Development Management Procedures, provides that it is for the applicant to decide what level of detail they wish to provide when making an application for planning permission in principle. It also advises that it is open to planning authorities to require further information under Regulation 24, where necessary to determine the application. This can include details of the proposed dwelling house. It is noted that such a request has not been made during the consideration of the application by the case officer. Would members wish to request further details of the proposal via a procedure notice, or would members be happy to consider this case without any further such details of the dwelling house, noting that this is an application for planning permission in principle? Noting the site visit request from the applicant's agents, are members persuaded that there is sufficiently compelling set of reasons to undertake such a visit in this case? Are members persuaded that further written information should be submitted? Does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2, Policy H3 and MPF4, Policy 17 and the associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside? If it is considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for the proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? So, having outlined the documents in your papers, the local review body should decide whether they have sufficient information to consider the review. No representations from any party will be heard today, and the options available are that you can decide you have sufficient information to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations, specifying precisely the information you're seeking and who should provide it, resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters, resolve to hold a site visit accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, you have the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. The planning advisor present was not the case officer or the appointed officer, and he will provide advice as needed on matters of planning, policy, law or process. A solicitor is still present and she will advise members on matters of law if required. So I'll now pass back to the Chair and ask you to lead the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Islop.
Chair, when I was reading through this report, I did notice the commonality of my surname and the applicant. And I wasn't exactly sure who it was because I have a cousin, David, who stays down at Brightcourt Way. However, after being mentioned that the applicant stayed at Palace Now, I know that's another relation of mine, and it might be better if I was to declare an interest and leave, just to be open and
Yeah, I think, you know, it's up to the member whether they want to declare an interest or not, but if you feel that's necessary, then that would be right. We've got enough people in to make the decision today anyway. Okay, members, so we've got a decision to make first of all on the labour requirement report, whether we want to take this in, what's it called? Private session or not. Do we need it? I'm not 100% we need to read this at the moment. Councillor Dempster.
I'm with you, Chair, in as much as we should only be in private session if we want to debate the content of the report. The fact that we have it before us doesn't necessarily mean we're going to a session. What I would ask though is, has our case officer or the appointed officer had sight of this document, and would that have changed the recommendation? Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Robert, can you answer that question?
My understanding, Chair, is that this information was in front of the appointed officer when the decision was taken. It's just of a sensitive nature.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Dempster?
Absolutely, Chair, in which case I don't think I need to get in a session to discuss the document. No, thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other thinking, we'll go into this without the need to review the exempt item. So we've got index of content. We'll go for the photographs first, I think, Robert. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just happy to go through these. They replicate the pictures, 3 pictures that you see in your papers on pages 657 to 658. Again, supplied by the case officer in the captions too. I haven't been to this site either. So the first picture is a view of the site seen in the distance from the A701 public road, and this is looking to the northwest. Second picture is a view from the previous photograph panning more to the west, so round to the left-hand side here. And the third picture I've been given is a view from the previous photograph panning more round to the north, so panning round to the right here. That's obviously quite a rainy day.
That's an Indian nest deal for you, Ken. Okay, we'll go through the index of context in, members, for points of clarification. So we've got the notice of review dated 15th of May on pages 531 to 536. Any points of clarification? We've got the report on the handling on pages 539 to 581. Any points of clarification required? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just again for a point of clarity, it mentions on page 542, 4.7, right at the very bottom of that paragraph, the original farmhouse in Stedden was severed from the land and converted to a holiday accommodation. If we were minded to grant permission for this, have we any control to stop that from happening again? I don't think we do.
Robert.
No, Chair. My reading of the final sentence of paragraph 4.7, it says the original farmhouse and steading are located to the west of the A74M, to the north of Beatwick, having been severed from the land at some point and converted to holiday accommodation and a conference centre. So that's happened at some point in the past, and now it's out with your control in your consideration of this particular case.
Okay. Observation of the point officer on the applicant's agent notice of review, pages 585 to 586. Any points of clarification? Comments of the application's agent on observations of the appointed officers, pages 589 to 591. Any points of clarification? Okay. Planning application form submitted on the 10th of September 2024, associated plan and supporting information, pages 595 to 613. Any points of clarification? Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 24th April 2025, pages 617 to 620. Any points of clarification? And then we have the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 National Planning Framework 4. So members, we have in front of us a report for decision. Do we believe we have enough information to make that decision today? I think we do as well. Anybody other-minded? Okay, folks, we're in the session. Anybody got to say anything? Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks very much, Yeah, I'm just looking at the conclusion of the delegated report and the test of the policies, whether or not the dwelling house is essential, and it's clearly not in this case, so I would uphold the decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dempster.
I was going to make a couple of points about the delegated report and the observation of appointed officers. It was quite clear that I think the officer's decision was the right one, and I would second Councillor Campbell in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dempster. Anybody else further minded? So we're agreed that we uphold the officer's recommendation. Yeah?
Thanks, Chair. Members have agreed that they have enough information to determine the review today and have concluded that they wish to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I've not had any note of any other business, so at that point I'll close the meeting. Thank everybody for their input and their questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.